Don't put on the music yet, Joe. Let me get everybody in.
Yeah.
How many people?
5, I think. Let's see.
You
All
look good,
right, I
Margo.
see. Okay, let's see. One,
I
two.
like your background.
Thank you. I'm in the cemetery.
I see that.
All right. I think we have everyone. We can get started. Go ahead, Joe. You're
Yeah.
on.
It's not sharing.
Of course not. Bear with us, everyone.
There we go. We got it. Oh, you see the screen? All right, here we go. Ready?
I'm ready.
1, 2, 3.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kerriann Flanagan Brosky.
And I'm Joe Giaquinto.
And tonight we have a very special show for you with special guest Margo Arceri, who's a very well-known historian out in the Setauket, Strong's Neck, Stony Brook, St. James area. So we have a great show for you tonight. Great webinar, I should say. I'm so used to the show thing back from when we used to do our radio show days. And we
That's
had
right.
Margo as a guest back then. But tonight we're doing our webinar on the Brewster House, which is located in Setauket. So as you've been following, Joe and I have been doing a series of webinars over the winter. We will be back to live events for the fall book tour. So do get on my mailing list. You can get to it by going on to my website, ghostsoflongisland.com, if you're not already on there, and get the emails, and you will find out about what events we will be doing in person this upcoming fall. So tonight is actually our last of our presentations for our winter webinar season. And I hope you've enjoyed it, what we've done so far. So with that being said, tonight we are going to talk about the Brewster House and Setauket as a great story. And I would like to first introduce Margo Arceri. Margo was the vice president and trustee of the Three Village Historical Society, and she was also the president of the Strong's Neck Civic Association. Margo is a historian in her own right, and we spent a lot of time with her learning about the culper spiring over the past several years. And she showed us many of the places where these people lived and worked, and also where they are buried. Margo is truly a wealth of information, and we are very grateful for the time she has shared with us throughout all of the books that I have written. She's been on many an adventure with us, and it's been great. In fact, that picture of Joe in the opening music is a picture of Joe out in Strong's Neck, and Margo was with us for that. I also want to make mention that Margo has taken her what she does as a historian to another level, and she also runs something called Tri-Spy Tours, where she guides cyclists, walkers, and kayakers through the actual trails where the culper spiring, roamed, where the British and the Patriots roamed during the Revolutionary War. And it's a very successful, thing that she's been putting out. And you can learn more about that by checking out the website on that. So Margo has been a guest on our webinars before. She was also a regular guest when Joe and I used to do Blog Talk Radio many years ago. And we just love spending time with her. So it was kind of appropriate that our last webinar of the season, we would have Margo. So Margo, thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, this is, you said a word, adventure. And
Yes.
I go back to the 10 plus years that I've had the privilege of sharing a friendship with yourself and Joe, and going on these adventures of history and really looking behind the history to the people
Mhm.
and bringing them to the present. And I think that has been probably the most exciting part for me. Obviously, my passion is with the Culper Spy Ring and Anna Smith Strong in particular. But really, when the three of us get together, you can kind of feel something shift. And we really feel that they're trying to get through to us because they want their story heard.
Mhm.
These were ardent patriots, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And it really wasn't until, the 1920s and 30s where the story came to life. Obviously
Yes.
today with Turn and, Brian Kilmeade's book and, Alexander Rose's Washington Spies, obviously the Culper Spy Ring is much more, on the forefront of people who are, lovers of American history. But it's really always a treat to get together. So I'm really looking forward to tonight. The Brewster House is such a special landmark in our
Mhm.
community. I mean, we really feel at the Historical Society that the community is our museum.
Mhm.
And this certainly is one of our best artifacts.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to tonight.
Good. I'm glad. And if you just
Thank you
want
both
to,
for having me once again.
you're
You know-
very
you know-
What the night
welcome.
brings.
We always have a lot of fun with you, Margo. And, there is a connection made between the Brewster House and the Culper Spy Ring. And so we thought it would be great, if you could give us an overview of the Culper Spy Ring, and then we'll discuss the relationship to the Brewster House. And, we'll also have a wonderful Ghost Box recording for you. We'll share with you in the audience later. But Margo, I just wanted to ask you a quick question off topic. When you do the tours through the woods and stuff, do you ever feel the presence? Do you ever get any spiritual or, haunting activity there?
Absolutely. I think
That's what I thought.
the most active place is probably St. George's Manor Cemetery,
Mhm,
which is where Anna and Celia Strong are buried.
mhm.
You certainly get a pull and a tug, and those are the words I'm going to use when you go to where Abraham Woodhull. His final resting place is in the graveyard of the Setauket Presbyterian Church. I think Patriots Rock, where the Patriots used that during the Battle of Setauket to sort of set up camp. And really the other part, which I'm glad we're doing the Brewster House because we talk about where it's situated, is the waterways around this
Mhm.
area.
Yes.
That was their main mode of transportation.
Right. True.
So you certainly, I've had many people who come on the tours and say, you can kind of just feel the history here. And, kayaking and going out there, you can close your eyes and it's the same waterways through from, 250 years ago.
And that's where we heard the cannon fire, right,
And
Kerriann?
exactly, which we spoke about when I was on the show last.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's definitely in the air, that energy.
And we've all felt it. We all, I mean, again, we've been with Margo multiple times in the woods of Strong Neck and in these different houses and historical properties. And it's just been, Margo really nailed it. You could just feel that there's a shift. And I think with all of the energy that we combine with it, we get a lot more, information from the other side. And Margo, could you just tell us your backdrop, where that is?
So I am hanging out in the St. George's Manor Cemetery. So on my right, we have Anna Smith Strong. And on my left, we have her husband, Celia Strong.
And we're going to talk about that very shortly.
Mhm.
So for now, we're going to talk a little bit about the Brewster House. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you not only the history, but our paranormal findings with our listeners this evening. I would also like to say that the Brewster House is owned by the Ward Melville Heritage Organization, which also owns the Thompson House, which we did a webinar on.
Mhm.
And they also own the Gristmill in Stony Brook, which I've written about. And they are in charge of the William Sidney Mountain House as well.
And the
So-
country house they own,
and-
Kerriann.
Oh, they do now. Okay,
Yeah.
that's news to me.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
So the country
And-
house has been leased for like 90, since.
Okay, I never
Oh, I see.
realized that, because the
Yeah,
country
we're-
house, as everyone knows, is a big, a big part of what Dawn and I have done, started with the country house. So I always like to say that we really need to encourage these historical societies to continue what they're doing. And the best way we can do that, if it's within your means, is to provide, some funding for them to keep these houses open and to keep their programs up and running. Especially with COVID, all these historical organizations have been hit very badly. And it's very upsetting to me because, again, I know these people personally, and to see these organizations struggle through this because they couldn't have fundraising events and that type of thing. And, if we didn't have them, we couldn't keep these buildings and these structures open to the public. We couldn't be doing these webinars. I couldn't be writing about them in the book. So if your means allow, please support the Ward Melville Heritage Organization. And once they get back up and running to their full capacity, they have amazing programs. Joe and I have done a lot of lectures for them in the past. They have a great community center. We are hoping that maybe in a year from now, it'll be up and running again. So I just wanted to make mention of that because I always say I'm a historian first and a ghost investigator second. So I need to plug these historical places and to keep everything moving and alive. So now on to the Brewster House, which is located in Setauket. It is also known as the Joseph Brewster House, which was built circa 1665. Do we have a picture of that, Joe, that we could bring up now?
Yes, let me bring up the.
Okay. And while you're doing that, I'll say it's actually the oldest house within the town of Brookhaven that's still existing. The salt box style home was originally a one-room cottage that had been expanded 5 times throughout 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. And you may recall, many other houses. We did the house in Port Washington.
You see it, Kerriann?
Also, yeah, we have it up on the screen now. So you could really see how the structure has that salt box, architectural, work to it. Now it's located on Route 25A, which is a busy thoroughfare, which was once a Native American trail. When the settlers came in 1665, they turned the trail into a road and called it King's Highway. It is now referred to as Washington Spy Trail. And you may, if you go down to towards Port Jeff, you may see these little signs that say George Washington Spy Trail. So it's really kind of neat when you go down, because you can see the Brewster. If you're heading east, you could see it on the left-hand side. And just knowing that this was once a trail where the Patriots and the spies. Go ahead, Joe. What were you saying?
No, I was going to say, I want to talk about that a little bit. But when we were at the Slave House in Stony Brook, wasn't there one of those signs there that said it was the Spying Trail or something?
I think there was something with George Washington.
George Washington.
Definitely, because
North Country Road.
Yes,
That's right. Yes,
because he went behind there too. So
that's right.
Yeah,
and
it's really fascinating
on that road.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt.
Reverend Nathaniel Brewster came to Setauket from England not long after the British settlement of Setauket. Now he became the town's first ordained minister, and he served the Presbyterian congregation until his death in 1690. The house in which he lived consisted of one small room with a fireplace, which was used as a living room, dining room, and a kitchen, which they did back then. Everything was very close. Everybody was in the same space, basically. And a garret upstairs was used for sleeping space. Now, the large fireplace is where meals were cooked, and also provided the only source of heat for the home.
Can I just hop in here real quick on just the
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the original part of the house, the extension was put on by Ward Melville later on, but most houses in the north had a center fireplace. If you're looking at the home, put your eye on that center fireplace.
Right.
Go to the front door there. So you have 4 windows on the left and the 2 on the right.
Right.
The home ended right after that first window on the right to the front door.
Yeah,
okay.
which is amazing.
That entire area on the right was added on later. And the door you're seeing here was the family's entrance.
Okay.
And on the rear of the house, there's another door, and that was the door into the tavern. So
Oh, okay.
had a little bit of a tavern and that to the right there.
Oh, I love it.
And the
Thank
living
you.
quarters were up on the left there.
Right.
And you really figure out the older homes because most in the north had the fireplace in the center. So they
Yes.
could go out, and on the south, they're typically on the ends.
Right.
But when Ward Melville took over the property back in the 60s, they added this section on the right. And when you're in the home, you can clearly see.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Margo.
Yeah.
for sharing that.
we do have more pictures of the home we're going to show.
Yeah,
right,
we'll
Kerriann?
show some on the inside, but that is fascinating because, you really can see how it was laid out. Here's, it's been put on the National Register of Historic Places, which is great. Now, going back to the family itself, Here's me.
Kerriann, you're going into the tavern, I think.
I want to go into the tavern, exactly. Records show that Nathaniel had 3 sons, but only Timothy and Daniel came across with him to America. So his oldest son, John, had remained in England. It was Timothy who actually inherited the house and approximately 10 acres after his father's death. And he expanded it so he could accommodate his wife, Mary Hawkins, and their 7 children. So can you imagine? I mean, like Margo said, this was only half of the house, and he had 7 children in this house. The expansion took place in the early 1700s when an almost identical house was placed next to the original 17th century room. The center chimney and framing elements were rebuilt to the houses, and they could be joined together. So it created a house that was nearly double in size. Now, Daniel lived nearby and had inherited a second home lot, which his father had purchased from John Rowe. Both Timothy and Daniel became prominent figures within the town of Brookhaven government, each having served as a town clerk at various times.
Yes, and the youngest of Timothy's children, Joseph Brewster, inherited the family homestead after Timothy's death in circa 1741. Now, Joseph served as the town justice, was also one of Setauket's early innkeepers. Records indicate that Joseph was granted a license to keep a public house of entertainment and to sell strong drink or liquor by retail in the house where he was dwelleth. So that sounds like fun.
Right, that was a quote, by
Yes,
the way.
Turning one's home into an inn was not uncommon in its day. Since early settlements were few and far between, license was granted to turn homes into taverns, general stores, and inns where homeowners could provide food and lodging to travelers.
Now Joseph and his wife, Ruth Briscoe, they had 5 children there. There were 4 girls and a boy. It was during this time that the house was enlarged by a lean-to addition with low sweeping roofline, giving it the salt box farmhouse look popular of colonial New England. The lean-to addition more than likely served as a pantry. By this time, the house was comprised of 5 smaller rooms attached to the back facade. Joseph, who also served in the town as a tailor, lived in the house and ran it as an inn until his death in 1760. And this was a common practice that people would open up part of their home as an inn to make extra money, and they would live there. So you can imagine how difficult that must have been, having children, running it as an inn. So it's interesting.
I was thinking, was it the Nathaniel Conklin house in Babylon where they had the country store running?
Yes, yeah.
So,
I mean, many of the houses that we've done were run, like even the Thompson house that had the extension, which he had his medical practice. And so houses were used for a number of different purposes, not just as a residential. Exactly.
Now, Joseph's son, known as Joseph the Younger, was next in line after his father's death. And Joseph, like many of his descendants, was a prominent figure, having served as a lieutenant in the French and Indian War and later a justice and trustee of the town of Brookhaven. He, like his father, operated a tavern out of the house. He reluctantly entertained British soldiers during the Revolutionary War in order to save his farm from being destroyed or confiscated by the British. He did not trust the British and had installed a barricade at the door at night to prevent surprise visits from them.
I mean, can you imagine living this way? And, this was a common thing. I mean, we have Raynham Hall in Oyster Bay, which was the Townsend house, and the same thing. I mean, they had the British living with them. And this was a very common thing that went on in many homes for many years.
Yeah, and that resulted in the brutal death of in the country house.
Of Annette Williamson, because they thought that she was pro-British. And so once the British left there, they had brutally murdered her in the what is now the Oldfield Room. So it really was very difficult. And so what Joe and I have done, and what I have done in researching all of these places throughout the years from the original Ghosts of Long Island book, is I really have seen how everything has come together as far as the Revolutionary War stories. And through Margo's help, I could see like all how the puzzle pieces work and how each place has something to do with the next. So the places out in Stony Brook and Setauket have a connection to Oyster Bay, let's say. So that's why we thought it would be great to bring Margo on now and talk a little bit about the cult perspiring, who the people were, because there was a connection, which we will tell you shortly, about this home and one of the people from the cult perspiring. So Margo, if you want to just tell us a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, so I think the way I'm going to approach this is I'm going to call it, as I referred on the tours, the triangle.
Mhm.
So here we have Joseph Brewster, Caleb's cousin's home. If you see the yellow in the background there of the
Mhm.
photo in the trees, almost looks like a large forsythia.
Yes.
Right behind there is Benjamin Talmadge's birthplace. If you went to the right of the house, about not even a quarter of a mile down, right on the King's Highway there now, present day 25A, that's where the Road Tavern stood. If you went behind the house, there's a little creek. That creek leads out to Strong's Neck, Anna Smith Strong. Across from there, we have the homestead of Abraham Woodhull. So those were the cast of characters, but it really does form a triangle. So they all were easily able to see the comings and goings because of the water, like I mentioned before. And this is always a highlight on the kayak tour. But the spiring really was the brainchild of Major Benjamin Talmadge. I always like to point out that he was a child prodigy. He was asked to attend Yale at the age of 12. So the fact that he was asked to go so young meant that he could both read and write Greek and Latin. So imagine that at 12 years old. I can't even do that.
Amazing.
50 something. So anyway, he quickly moved up the ranks of the Continental Army, becomes part of George Washington's inner circle. I always like to tease and say these two had a bromance because they truly would do anything for each other. Mm-hmm. And when it became very apparent that, Washington wasn't going to outmuscle the British, but he could certainly outspy them, he went to this young major and said, I need information. You're from Long Island. And Long Island was an integral part of the war because we had food, we had lodging, we were surrounded by water. So all the ships coming in and out of New York Harbor, would go typically on Long Island Sound. So Washington asked Talmadge to do this, and he agrees. And spying was a low-life occupation. It wasn't honorable, and it was dangerous. And I always like to describe it this way: is that he didn't go to the men in the army. He came home to Setauket and called on his band of brothers and perhaps his sister and said, I need your help. And each person had a very distinct role for a reason. First, he went to Abraham Woodhull. He was a farmer, probably the least likely person that you would think would be a spy. I know Turn depicted him quite differently, but he was sick a lot of the times. He was afraid. But he had Woodhull really be the base of operation here in Setauket. And then we've, Caleb Brewster. I love to describe him that if he wasn't a whaleboat captain and a spy, he probably would have been a great pirate.
I agree.
I picture him in my mind sort of looking like Gaston from Beauty and the Beast.
Right.
But he was already spying for Washington, kind of rogue a little bit prior to joining the cult perspiring. So he was a natural fit. He had no fear. He was shot twice during the war. He had his whaleboat business. He had employed a lot of Native Americans. He was shot twice. So Brewster's main role was to be the courier across the Long Island Sound. Then we have Austin Rowe. They needed to know what was going on in New York. So Rowe had a tavern, and you would be stopped, on Long Island heading into New York to, what were you doing? So Rowe had the perfect cover because he was going to get supplies for his inn. And that's really where we bring in Robert Townsend, because he needed a key person in New York. And at this point, Townsend was in New York. So he's the only non-Setauket person. And we'll save his story for another day why he got involved. And the problem with the whole way the spiring operated is where Abraham Woodhull lived, it was impossible for him to see where Caleb Brewster went once he entered the harbor. And then we bring in Anna Smith Strong. She lived on the neck. At that point, it was actually known as Seaton's Neck. It was owned by a man named Andrew Seaton. He was a large landowner in New Jersey. So that might trigger something in your mind of land that he donated and what it became, because his last name was Seton. So where do you think I'm going with that? Seton Hall University. So okay, that's
exactly.
Perfect. Okay,
Exactly.
so he took off during the war. He was a loyalist to secure his New Jersey property. That's when Anna and Celia were brought over to the Neck. They did not live there then. The Smiths sold it to Seton, but he didn't pay off his mortgage. So it was sort of up in limbo.
Right.
And as soon as Anna and Celia got there, Celia was arrested. The British took over the manor homes, which they did on most of the North Shore. And Anna was left there with her 6 children. I guess, the strike of fate, the cottage that they forced her to live in happened to be right across from Little Bay. So I don't know if you can kind of zoom out a little bit. So Kerriann, you can't see my pointer, can you?
Yeah, no.
Okay, so if you go, go close, zoom in, sorry. Yeah, right there. Okay, so move it over just to the left of Poquat. Oh, the other way, west. That little bay there. So across from above the Emma Clark Library. So go into the channel there.
Right.
Abraham Woodhull's property was right there on Dyke Road. Yes. Anna was right across that waterway there. Abraham Woodhull can't see into the sound. Go a little north. Anna just had to walk over to the high point of the property, and now she sees everything. And this is where the clothesline came into play. She would see Brewster come through the channel, figure out there's about 6 different coves and inlets, but from where you are here, it's the highest point on Strong's Neck. You can pretty much see where he was going. You walk across the property, hang a clothesline. If there was a black petticoat, that signaled to Abraham Woodhull that she saw Caleb Brewster. And then the number of handkerchiefs hanging on the line throughout the laundry would indicate where they should meet. And there's a little creek right behind the Joseph Brewster house, the house we're speaking of tonight. That certainly was one of the meeting places. It was not visible from town where the fort was, where Fort Setauket was, where Hewlett was in charge. And so Woodhull would look across. He would meet with Caleb Brewster. They would exchange information, and then Brewster would take it across the Long Island Sound throughout the Fairfield area. And from there, it went by courier. They were known as Talmadge's Dragoons. And they would change every 15 miles or so. And it would eventually end up in Washington's hands, either at West Point or in New Jersey, depending on where he was stationed at the time.
Right.
So that's the short.
And then you could see on here too, you see, if you go down back to Long Island, you can see where 25A is, which was King's Highway. And you could see the relationship. I don't know, can we zoom in a little bit more on that? All right, so if you see where it says Port Jeff, if you move to the left of that, where it says 25A, you could see how close the Brewster House was up in that area,
Actually, right there,
north.
if you want to stop, that is 25A.
The yellow line, correct? Yeah.
The top one, though, not that. There we go, right there.
Yeah.
Right there. There you go.
Okay. So the Brewster House is right along there. So you could see it's not that far from the water. And what's interesting, Margo, and I have a question for you. And I don't know if I ever asked you this.
To the left, that yellow marker on the left, says Fort Deli.
Right.
That's the Brewster House right there.
Oh, okay.
Present day Strong's Neck right above it.
See, look at how
The old
close.
bridge used to be. There you go.
I'm so glad we have this map to show that, because even for me, it gives a sense of things. Now, of course, we have all these people. We have Anna Strong, Abraham Woodhull, Caleb Brewster, all of them. But we only found out about this, what was it, like 15, 20 years ago that they discovered the spy ring? I don't remember exactly when, but it was
1923, East Hampton Town.
1923. Okay, so I was a little off. Right, okay.
Between Townsend and Samuel Culper Jr.
Okay, so it was hidden for all of that time. I thought it was more recent for some reason.
More information has come out with more spy.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing, like we know those core people, but when Joe and I did the investigation at the Thompson house, and we found out that Abraham Woodhull was in fact a patient, so-called, of Dr. Thompson. And Dr. Thompson was someone who actually studied books on espionage. So we're left to wonder, was Dr.
I certainly
Thompson,
think he helped.
right? So that was my question.
That's what I think.
Do you think that he was? I know that many people over at Ward Melville believe that, and I believe it. So I wanted to get your opinion on it. There's so much that we still don't know about about the spy ring, but that was a really great overview, Margo. I mean, I never get tired of hearing your stories about the culprit spy ring. And even though I've written about it myself, I have to give credit where credit is due. Everything I've learned from you.
Well, actually, I just
So,
discovered something 2 days ago.
Really?
That Caleb Brewster had a fill-in when he wasn't available because of his business. It was a G.S. Smith, part of the Smith
Really?
town.
And how did you find that out?
Through a friend of mine who works with Suffolk County, and she's been
Wow.
working with the historians there, and we found a few things referring to a G.S. Smith doing work for Caleb Brewster.
Really? Yeah.
So that was kind of neat. There's literally 2 days ago I got the email. I was like, wow.
That is amazing.
that
I
great?
mean, what you don't realize is that they really put their lives at risk for their country. And it was very, very dangerous. And I did see Turn. I enjoyed the series. It wasn't 100% accurate. Again, Anna Smith Strong didn't have any children. And, there was some drama to it, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. But it's just a fascinating story. And like you said, we just keep getting more and more information that gives us more clues as to what exactly went on there. So going back to the Brewster House for a moment and the history, Joseph in particular, after the Revolutionary War was over, he was given 750 acres by the newly formed American government. I mean, that's a lot of acreage, 750. And he built a sizable estate. As a thank you, though, he loaned 300 pounds to the Continental Congress in 1781. During his time in the house, Joseph married 3 times and had 9 children. Usually they would marry because the wives would die, oftentimes during childbirth. But his 9 children were from his first wife, Rebecca Mills. Now, after Joseph the Younger's death in 1818, his 2 youngest sons, John and William Mills Brewster, inherited the family homestead, and son Samuel inherited the north end of the dwelling house for 10 years. John, for reasons unknown, relinquished his claim for his portion.
Yeah, and at the time of Joseph's death, there were 3 generations of Brewsters living in the house. His 3rd wife, Lucretia Overton, son of William Mills, and his wife, Juliana, and their 2 children, Joseph's grandchildren, and son Samuel. It is believed that further expansion of the home in the federal period may have taken place during the time of their occupancy.
I mean, it's amazing. And then, as you said, Margo, which I wasn't aware of, that there was further expansion during Ward Melville's time of it, which is amazing.
I don't know if we mentioned it to the viewers. So Joseph Brewster and Caleb Brewster are cousins. Caleb grew up about a quarter mile down the road. The home's no longer there, but he spent a tremendous amount of time at that little creek there coming in. That's where he kept his boat.
Yeah, and I'm sure he had to have been in the Brewster House many times. I mean, we have no proof of it, but it's more than likely that he was. Now, William Mills Brewster and Juliana Dickerson were married in 1804, and they had a son who was named William Mills and a daughter named Martha. The son, William Mills, died at the age of 17 in 1832. William Mills Brewster Sr. died in 1854 at age 74 and had bequeathed half of his real estate to his daughter named Martha Brewster Wilsey. The other half was to his granddaughter Mary. It was stated in the will that his wife Juliana should be allowed to stay in the house for the remainder of her life. And oddly enough, Juliana died at age 82 in 1863, which was really
that's a long time.
That's a long time for that time period.
What was the average? What was the lifespan, Margo, around then? Was it in the 40s?
About, 65 to 70.
Oh, it was. Oh, was that high? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's still, but that is amazing. So she really outlived. Now, daughter Martha had been widowed by her husband, Captain Benjamin T. Wilsey, sometime before 1850. And while he was alive, Captain Wilsey kept the Brewster tradition of the innkeeper alive by becoming the first proprietor of the Port Jefferson Hotel. Now, Martha's daughter, Mary Wilsey, married John R. Davies in 1860 at the age of 23. They had 5 children and continued to live in the family home. Mary Wilsey Davis died in 1877. John died in 1922. Upon the death of their father, two of the unmarried children, Isaac M. Davis and Mary H. Davis, inherited the home and approximately 10 acres. Sometime before 1941, the brother and sister sold 6 acres. Now, Isaac died in 1936. Mary H. died in 1947. Now, Mary's will from 1941 stated that upon her death, the estate would be inherited by her sister Cornelia. Now, Cornelia died before Mary, but the will had not been changed. The estate was then passed down to Mary's niece and nephew, Jenny E. Smith and Robert B. Elderkin, the children of Cornelia.
I mean, it's really hard to believe just how many family members had this. So a year later, Jenny and Robert sold the house and 4 acres to Ward Melville, which, Margo had mentioned. And he owned the property and the house until 1970. Melville then deeded it to the Stony Brook Community Fund, which is now what is called the Ward Melville Heritage Organization. But all in all, 7 generations of Brewsters had lived in the house and 3 generations of Davises. When Mary H. Davis died in 1947, the house still did not have plumbing, electricity, central heat, or any modern amenities. I mean, that was 1947, and the house remained unchanged. So with a history as rich as this one, Joe and I were excited to visit and conduct an investigation to see if we could connect with those who had lived or even visited the house before. As far as we knew, no one had claimed to have had any paranormal type of experiences in the house. At the time that we were investigating the home, I wasn't working on this last book, Haunted Long Island Mysteries. And as I said, we have a good working relationship with the Ward Melville Heritage Organization. And it was Gloria Rocchio, who is their president, who had said to us, I'm kind of curious to see what you would pick up in the Brewster House and Thompson House. So that's how we got into both of those. And so at the time, we weren't doing it for the book. And when I found out I was, in fact, writing another ghost book, I asked Gloria if it would be okay to include these homes. And she was very excited because, again, I always say that it's the history that I want to keep alive. And what better way to learn about history than through a ghost story? So, but neither the Brewster House nor the Thompson House was ever considered to have any spirits in it. And I don't like to use the word haunted with this at all, because again, that gives off the impression of it being scary and murderous and demonic. And but with these properties, when you have something that old, there's so much energy that's left behind. So not only is it energy that we're picking up, but it also could be people that are just visiting. It doesn't mean that they're stuck there. For instance, Country House, we talk about Annette Williamson is place-centered, meaning for reasons unknown, she didn't cross over to the other side. But for our purposes with the Brewster House and the Thompson House, we believe that these were spirits that were sort of just coming. They saw what we were doing and they wanted to visit. So before we get into the ghost portion of this, we'd like to share some slides with you of the house. So if Joe, if you have that set up,
I do.
We'll start that.
Mm-hmm.
And Kerriann, if I may, and Joe,
Mhm.
so you mentioned the 6 acres were sold off.
Mhm.
The original homestead extended to about where the Shell gas station is on 25A.
Okay.
Then it went back to Bruce Street, and actually the Brewster Family Cemetery is located there.
Oh, is it?
That was
we
the whole
haven't been there.
Yeah. No.
All
Yes,
right.
I'll have to take you guys there.
All right. That's
If you guys
another
ever
adventure,
wandering
Margo.
Setauket and-
That'll have to be the next book, Kerriann.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not know that. I mean, we still have a bunch
Yeah.
of things that we have to do with you, Margo, but that would be good. I didn't even realize
Yeah,
that.
so
I had
then
no
you get
idea
an
what
idea
it
of what the
was.
property was like.
Yeah, we need a reason, Margo, to get together again.
Well, there you go. Now we have
Exactly.
to.
Now we do. We'll see what we get. All right. So this, as we showed you, this is the Brewster House as this. Me in front of it, as we mentioned before. All right. Here's Joe in the entranceway of the
Now,
door.
was this the tavern entrance?
So the tavern was on the other side. That's
The other
the
side.
family home.
Yeah, this was the family entrance. And here's me again.
You seem like you're in some sort of trance, Kerriann.
Yeah, Kerriann.
As I'm walking away, you caught me in the moment.
I did.
Right. So now you could really see this salt box structure. It's
It's great. I
really
love
pretty
that design.
cool. So this is a
So
side
that's the
view
Melville extension right there.
Mhm.
right here. Yep.
And then to the right, that's where the tavern entrance was.
Okay.
Okay.
So this
That's
is the
tavern entrance.
so that's the tavern entrance.
Right.
All right. So this would be the back of
Right.
the
You go
homestead.
through that door and right to the left was the tavern.
Mhm.
Mhm.
The family
Okay.
lived to the right.
Okay. Another view of the salt box.
So those are
Okay.
bedrooms in the foreground there on those two windows.
Mhm.
And you could see where it's right off of 25A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's right, really close.
Here's Joe, the man at work.
I don't know where you capture these shots. I know you sneak in and sneak
I know,
away.
you look like Orson Welles.
There's like
I
an orb
do.
in that shot. Do you guys see that on the branch?
I was wondering about that. I don't know if that's a
Oh,
sunspot or an
right
orb.
here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Well,
might have been the sun, but although it was a
Yeah.
cloudy day that day,
It is interesting though, the way it kind of
yeah,
creates
could
that.
be something forming.
This
and-
shows that this makes it look a lot larger.
Yeah, and I like how this is because you see, how it's sort of set in the land there,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And you see how close it is to the road. You can see that off to the right.
So you can see the Phragmites in that previous picture on the left there.
Mhm.
That's the creek. So really,
Right.
they were right. The access to the water was right there.
Wait, on which
So-
side? To the left?
To
You're
the
talking
left
about,
there.
Mark?
So those
Okay.
are Phragmites, which grow in not so great water.
Right here.
Okay.
Yeah. So the water access was right there. So that's where Caleb used to come in, right behind the house.
But now
Yeah,
there's no water there, right? Or is
It's
there a
a
little?
little- I mean, it's a little stream, but
Right.
it feeds out. They're actually clearing it now. So
We
Okay.
have one of my clients lives in a haunted house. It's in Calverton. And she's on the hill. She's on the highest point in the area and right near the Peconic River. Now you can't see the river, but I can imagine a couple hundred years ago, you could probably see the river because that would have been a good lookout for the British, where all the cranberry bogs and everything. But it's interesting how the landscape changes. So like you said, back then you probably could see a lot more of the water. You can get around a lot more, navigate the waters.
Yeah, definitely. And I like this picture too, because it shows how the foundation of this house
Mhm.
is built with the stone, and it's
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
it's really very cool.
That's the original foundational setting, right? That they
Yes.
didn't raise or anything.
Right.
and the other thing people have to remember is there were not a lot of trees back then.
Mhm.
You
Right.
used it to build your homes. You used it to cook with. You used it for the ships.
Mhm.
Use it to keep warm.
Right.
Yeah, wasn't there something about like out east, like Southampton or out that way, where all the trees were gone at one time? They had to replant them,
Yeah, they had to replant them all.
deforested. Mhm. Now, this
Okay,
is the
so
inside.
here's one of the inside. Now, again, Margo, feel free to chime in if you are familiar
So
with these
basically, that was the
homes.
family entrance, and if you went to the right, that's the family's living space.
Okay.
And that's that was their family's fire extinguisher, I assume.
Family's fire extinguisher. I know.
You
I
know,
like
it's
that.
interesting. I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about the old days Christmas. It's amazing to think that people used to have live Christmas trees with candles on them.
I know, right?
Yeah, it is
Big
hard to believe.
structures.
I mean, it's funny when you look at this picture. I mean, you see, like, when you really look at it, you see some modern things. You see the plastic garbage bag. You see the light on the left, which is kind of interesting because it shows you the contrast of what
Right. It's beautiful.
it was
though.
like then.
The
as
Pretty.
opposed
floors
to-
are original, and that's key to point out.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
because
gorgeous.
again, it's been a long time since we've been here, and
Yeah.
at the time we weren't doing it for the book, so I didn't really document as much as I would for when I knew. Now,
Mhm.
this was interesting because this, Margo, maybe you could help us out with this. This shows that there was an original foundation underneath. I don't know what they did
Right, and
with
then
this.
that's the extension wall after that.
Okay.
There's a
Okay.
room next to that, and you can really see the bump out. I don't know if you have a photograph of that or not.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm
What
not
was that?
sure.
That was probably for storage.
Right.
Now,
Okay.
what was that? Is that a drain? Why is that open like that down there?
Get out the old cheaters.
So this area down, what is this here?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Joe.
Yeah,
It
I
looks
think
like
that
it-
was may have been for extra storage. Again, I don't remember because at the time we were doing this, we weren't
Mhm.
going into that kind of detail. I think
Right,
we
right.
have, okay, what is that on the floor? Yeah, we're trying to figure it out.
But
We'll have
Melville
to-
might have opened it up
Yeah,
Oh, maybe,
to show
yeah.
the construction.
Well,
Yeah.
that's right. That's what it
Remember,
probably
this was
is.
a
I think
visit.
that's what it was.
Set up
That's
almost
what it
Right.
is. Right. They do that a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so here's another very simplistic,
So that's the extension,
Wow.
so that you have the original wall down there.
Mhm.
You see, that's why the floor changed.
Oh, I
okay.
see. Okay. So was the brick, was that a brick wall on the right? Was that the original or was the one
Yeah,
on the
that was
left?
added.
Yeah.
The fireplace,
Everything revolved around the fireplace, food,
Mhm.
cooking,
Yeah.
heat, everything,
everything, yeah.
community.
That's the newer fireplace. You'll have the older one, I'm assuming,
Mhm.
in the main room. There you go.
Yeah, so this is the main room. I mean, I just love this room. I love
I
the
do too.
windows. You see the wonderful ceiling with the beams. And this is just a good example. So now this part, Margo, this would have
That's
been
the
part of the tavern.
That's it.
Yeah. And
Now,
the family
Margo-
would have been to the left of,
To the
if you're
left,
looking
right.
at this
Mhm.
photo.
And Margo, the country house, the third floor was, top of it was, the roof was built with the beams from ships. Were these ship beams as well, or they just had lumber that they cut?
I'm not quite sure on that, but it might have been, they repurposed everything.
Right. It looks, it almost looks like the upside down hull of a ship here, like the country house roof.
Someone's asking, is the brick new or old? It was probably done when the Melville extension, so about the 60s. So with that answer, that would be new.
Okay.
Okay.
There's
And here's
view.
another long
And there's
view
the
and you see
fireplace.
part of
And
the
that door
fireplace.
there leads to that back entrance, but if you went right through, that's the family's living space.
Right.
Okay.
And then these are steps behind that chair and that leads up to the attic area,
Mhm.
which we
You-
have some great photos to show you up
Yeah,
there
we
in a
do.
little while. Yeah, this you can really see the breakdown of the expansion of the house. And then you can see where these bedrooms are.
Right.
It's interesting that the floor goes up as well. I wonder if that was just the way they wanted to preserve the original level, or
Yeah, it is interesting that there's a step that goes up like that. And
the
then you
beds
have-
back then were not very comfortable.
Right, and that's why you see on the bed, that, piece of wood there, that was to tighten.
Can I give my little
the beds.
description on that?
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, please
Go
do.
ahead,
All
please.
right,
do.
so in olden times, your box spring, so to speak, was made of rope. And there'd be a knot at the end of one of the posts, and the rope would loosen. So you'd undo the knot and you take that wooden key you see on the bed and you wrap the rope around it. And you keep turning it and turning it and turning it until it got really, really tight. So there's your hint. So what
Exactly.
expression do you think came from that?
Well, I know that there's an expression about
Hmm.
the bed bugs, that one I know.
That's part two.
Right.
that's
So what's the
sleep tight.
first one?
That's
Oh,
where you
sleep
get that sleep
tight,
tight.
that's right, you are correct.
Yeah, and then the
Sleep tight,
mattress is
don't let
usually
the bed bugs
grasses and leaves and sometimes a little more than
Right.
that. So don't let the bed bugs bite.
Don't let
And
the
it
bed
was
bugs-
dangerous too, because what you see here, this would be heated in the hearth, this long bed heater here. And you had to be really careful because again, the beds had straw and different material in it that was flammable.
So an ember could just,
Yeah, you could light your bed on fire. So
know,
it was
Not
something
easy
we-
living.
exactly, it was
No.
not by any means.
when
And
did the fire departments start up? Because they like these, you see these old movies where they're carrying this big thing of water and they're
yeah, I
drawing
don't really know.
barges. Yeah, because there must have been a lot of business for the fire department, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
Well, since
back
we're
in the
speaking
day.
of fires, what do you think the one activity that the females of that day perished from most?
I don't know.
Smoking in bed?
No, not childbirth. Something to do with fire. They probably did it 3 times a day.
Maybe.
Oh,
catching
cooking,
fire when
because
they were
they're
cooking.
petticoats, right? The petticoats
all
would catch
wool.
fire.
Yeah, and they were in
Yeah.
front of that fire for hours and hours and
Oh.
hours.
This is
Yeah.
Crazy. Wow.
Yeah,
There you
it
go.
is.
I had this picture, Kerriann, of a sampler.
Oh, this is nice. This is nice. Yeah,
So samplers are really cool.
yeah, that is nice. Excellent. All right, so now here's another. Oh, this must be one of yours, Joe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
What room was this?
Yeah, where is that?
I'm not sure. Again, it's been a couple of years since we've
I
been
think
there.
that's in the main living area.
Mhm. Yeah, it was one of the pictures when I took the pictures of the bedrooms, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is one that I took that I just like the lighting,
I love this.
looking out, you could picture them, the 6 over 6 windows.
Can you imagine
out.
them like waiting for the British to come
Yeah,
by?
that's what I'm saying. I mean, that they had to protect themselves, that they could just walk in at any time. Really very frightening times. All right, so before we get into this, Joe, do you want to talk a little bit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so
No electric blankets we have. Like that, I know. You could could go on fire from that too.
That's right.
Okay.
So as Kerriann mentioned earlier, we have worked for many years with Ward Melville Heritage Organization. Since Kerriann wrote the first Ghost of Long Island books, that was in 2006 and 2008. Before Kerriann had even decided to write another ghost book, Gloria Rocchio, president of the Ward Melville Heritage Organization, she's a really amazing person too. So she's just incredible, her mission, you know, and what she's accomplished. And she had asked us to conduct an investigation at both the Brewster House and the Thompson House. Now, neither were known to have any paranormal activity, but as soon as Kerriann and I walked through the Brewster House, I sensed a tremendous amount of spiritual energy, including those of British soldiers. Now, this was something I wrote, a little paragraph here I kind of journaled, so I want to read to you. Although I've only been to Brewster House one time with you, I've driven past it numerous times. My general impression, walking about, is that the structure and the surrounding property is beautiful yet restless, unpeaceful. I felt a lot of death around the house and saw the images of many British soldiers outside, as well as patriots inside the house plotting things. It's like the house was waiting for something to happen, for the shoe to drop. Being there, I felt the house was also tired and its energy spent. It just wants to be left alone, I feel.
Yeah, I know, because it is so old. And what's amazing, so Joe and I had spent time on the first floor of the house. Then we made our way to the second floor. And I was hoping to get some orbs up there because generally if there were servants or things like that, or people that were hiding, they would be up on that second floor. And for the first couple of minutes, Joe and I stood up there and we were both photographing together and nothing. We got absolutely nothing. And I think what helps Joe and I to get things is that we treat the spirits on the other side like what they are, which are people who have passed. So I politely asked the spirits, I said, if anyone's here with us today, which I think you are, I explained to them about the book and that we were doing this for educational purposes, to show that spirits can come and go and that life exists after this. And I said, if you could show us some orbs, up in this attic, we would really appreciate it. And literally, if you remember this, Joe, it was within 5 minutes that both of us started getting orbs.
Mhm.
And it lasted, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds to 40
It was
seconds.
like they just came out for us.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. And we just kept shooting, and as quickly as they appeared is as quickly as they had left. After that, again, we thanked them for their time, for showing us that they were there. We had a bunch, and then it just, the next frame, it was done. So we want to share some of these orb photos with you today. And we really thank them for the gift of their presence with us that day to really verify that there are spirits that come and visit the Brewster House to this day.
Yeah, and I'm going to, Kerriann, if you remember, I did a cell phone camera video of us on the first floor before we went upstairs.
Mhm.
And I think in that video, which I'm going to play when we play the Ghost Box recording, I think that we actually talked about asking the spirits to get orbs, and I think they said
Yes.
cool or something. So
Yeah,
get
so
to
we'll
that,
play
yeah.
that.
All right, so let me get those photos. So we're going to look at the orbs now. So
All
you wanna
right, so
talk
in this
about
one,
these?
I think we've shown this when we did webinars on orbs, so you may be familiar with this picture. This was taken upstairs of the Brewster House. So you see there's a big one on the right, and you can see how it's transparent. You can see behind it.
Mhm.
But there are a bunch on the left. You see the bigger orb with another one passing through. That's correct. You
Yeah.
see one above that on the beam. There's another one forming up above that. There's ones down below. I mean, this whole section.
To the top right, there's one.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, over here, up, the top right.
Higher
Margo
up.
has- Yeah, I keep using my thing and no one sees my marker here. And then in dead center here, Joe, I don't know if you could show this one to the left, keep going left. Yeah, a little higher and to the left.
Yeah, there's a couple there.
Right there, yep. Yep.
Is one.
Yeah,
thing.
kudos
And
to Gloria to letting you guys go up there. I mean, this area is,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
By the way,
Yeah.
wonderful
I
that
have a
they've been so
challenge
generous
with.
with you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
challenge
fabulous.
with the pointer because I have the camera in front of me, so some of
Right.
it's fine. So
Right.
if
But
I
yeah,
don't seem like I'm
but
finding
Gloria, she was great because she really
Mhm.
gave us carte blanche for here, for all the properties. I mean, we had carte blanche with William City Mount House. And because
Wonderful
again,
partner.
she has a very big interest in this herself. So
Yes.
and she knows us, you know, personally, so that we're very respectful of the history and keeping things, you know, without getting things damaged and whatnot.
Margo, I just have to ask you. So these straps, is this holding the roof together? Or
I've not, you know, I have to say, I've never been up to the attic. They look like support straps, you know, to kind of.
yeah, to keep things together.
On a funny note, I have to say, I don't know if you remember this, Joe, when we did come up here, we didn't know what these things were.
Right, right.
But we felt like we were in like, you know, like a James Bond or a Pink
Yeah.
Panther movie, because
Yes.
we're like, are we going to set something off? And we had to literally go underneath them.
Like doing the limbo.
Yeah, and we had to be very careful because I didn't know what was going to happen if we
if one
accidentally
of them
hit
let
it.
go, the whole
Yeah.
place would. I
So
know.
that's why when you see these pictures where we finally made it to, there was like a little extra room that we actually stood in, Joe, if you remember,
Yeah,
like
that
an
was,
extension.
we had to do some crawling around and some,
Yeah, this is for
you
a
know,
lot
tricks.
of assignments.
Yeah.
So we were literally standing in the same spot. That's why you don't really see from different angles up here, because we were primarily in the one area because it was hard to get around.
we
So
kept
here-
thinking these are giant rubber bands.
Yeah, I know, that's what it seemed like. So now here we are again. This was seconds later, and you see those larger orbs are gone, but you see a bunch on the floor here. You see them up on the left, how they're moving, they're changing, because each
Mhm.
orb, like a spirit, is different
They're moving
and
around.
represents a different person. Yeah.
Mhm.
You know,
Here we go
Kerriann
again.
and Joe, this property as well as the Thompson house is
Mhm.
typically, you know, closed to the public except for, you know, special events and groups. But Ward Melville Heritage has been a wonderful partner with
Yeah,
Culver
they have been.
Spillway.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that with COVID passed, these properties will be opened up again so folks can
Yeah, I
Definitely.
hope so
visit both
too.
of them. So
And-
We
ahead.
enjoyed the William City Mount House, and we had the opportunity to actually go inside, which we
Yeah.
did a webinar on it,
Yeah.
I think. Or
Yeah. So become members of Ward Melville
Yeah,
Heritage
support them,
Organization, because
support
then
these
you can
organizations.
find out when they open, or maybe you can even, you know, get a private tour. So this is now, you see, there's nothing here. Moments
Car-
later.
Kerriann, a question. Obviously, this is lighter. Did that just happen, or?
Yeah,
with
I don't
sun
really
coming
know what
out?
happened. The exposure when I was photographing, it must have just been different. But you see that there's not one orb in here.
and I wonder if they use the attic for servants like at the Thompson house.
I would think they must have,
Yeah.
you know.
I'd hate to be the
Especially
poor
that
soul that
back room
had
you
to.
see there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hate to be the poor soul that had to sleep under one of those straps, though.
Yeah, I
No,
don't
I'm
think
just
the
kidding.
straps were
No,
there.
they were put in by the
Yeah, exactly.
renovators.
So what do we have? So all right, so here's another one where you see just this little tiny one.
And this has a
There's
color
a few
to
in the
it too.
front as well,
Mhm.
Mhm.
on the left and right under that.
Oh,
first
yes, I see it. Down below this first strap, Joe,
First
it's
strap.
very faint.
Yeah,
Keep-
right there,
right
there's
there, right
one,
there.
and then
Mhm.
Yep,
all the way to the right, like around 3 o'clock there. There you go, bent down. Yep.
yeah,
Mhm.
there's a
Yep.
couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're around. If you look carefully, you could see a lot. And Kerriann, you always say that you should encourage people to look at some of their old family photos.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I see them sometimes with Newsday.
I do
I
too.
mean,
Yeah,
I've
I
looked in the
started seeing
paper,
them,
like
and
if they take a picture of a car accident at night,
you
I'm like,
see
oh,
orbs
there's
everywhere.
the person
Yeah.
that died.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
you see them literally going off to the other
True,
side.
true.
It's incredible. Now, okay,
that
I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. So,
Okay.
Joe, I know you had something else that
I did.
think you wanted to say, and then we'll
Yes.
talk
So,
about.
so next we did a question answer segment using our recorders to detect both white noise EVPs, which white noise being, that's a term for ambient noise in a room. Could be the sound of wind, could be the creaking of the house. It could be the sound of water running, and ghost box recordings, which we'll talk about the ghost box. I've got one. I'll just show it really fast here. If you can see it. It's mine is one of the original ones. It's older ones. It's a transistor radio, and it's been modified so that the spirits can monkey with this to use the voices on air as well as the noise in between, the static between stations, to answer questions real time. And so let's say you're a weather person and you're doing a weather report and saying tomorrow's going to be a beautiful day. And I say, what's the Thompson house like? Or what's the Brewster house like? What's heaven like? You know, whatever question you want to ask. And they will stop the scanner right when the weatherman says beautiful. So we're going to play the recording shortly for that.
And Margo, you haven't heard the Brewster recording yet, correct?
No, I don't think you have, right?
Yeah, this is great.
Now the white noise EVPs, we didn't capture any. The house is very quiet. Probably because there was no background noise, there were no equipment, no heating and ventilation, air conditioning running. So it could have been the reason we didn't get anything on that type of EVP. But our ghost box yielded numerous answers and were recorded on the first floor of the house in the main kitchen area. Now we connected with 3 spirits. One was Robert, who could have possibly been Robert Townsend, I think it was, from the Culper Spy Ring, and then Caleb Brewster, and also a man named Kenneth Barton, which is an English name, which we couldn't identify who he was. He did have a British accent, so maybe it's possible he was a British soldier who had visited the house. Now, do you want me to play just go right to the PowerPoint?
Well, I think you said that you had
I have
a
the
short
video.
video. So if you
do.
want to tell us about that first, and then we'll go into the ghost box recording.
Okay, sure. Let me just take a look real quick here. Yeah, so I have a video of, let me change screens here real fast. Hold on a second. So we were downstairs, right? And we were talking, I had the video on, and we were talking about going upstairs to do the orbs. And on this video, I actually put captions on the bottom where I heard EVPs. So that's what you'll see. So the text on the bottom is actually the spirits talking, okay? Let me get this queued up here. And here we go. Can you see that screen?
Yes.
Okay. Just find the, here we go.
You have this on recording?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Orbs?
I'm looking for them. Well, I just heard someone whisper in my right ear, like me, like that,
Oh, really?
right in my right ear. I felt my eardrum actually vibrate. By the way, I think your father's here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Caleb?
Okay, I think he's here.
Caleb, are you here with us? Are you happy that we've written about the spy ring?
They just said ring.
Yeah,
Did
I
you-
heard that. Yeah. Are you glad this house is preserved? Can you help us get some orbs or phenomenon in the attic?
I think he said okay.
We'd appreciate it so we could include this in another book down the road. Super.
Super.
Okay, so we'll go with your lead. I said cool.
Cool, yeah.
Thank you.
And of course, Arlington, that reference there is probably Arlington Cemetery, right? National Cemetery, where a lot of soldiers have been buried.
That's amazing, because I don't even remember you showing me that.
I may not have
Joe,
shown
so-
that one too.
Yeah, because for the book purposes, we couldn't really include that or to
that's
play
right.
for audiences since it is hard to hear, but I appreciate that. So now here is a clearer version of our Ghost Box
This
recording,
is the actual ghost box recording.
which we love. So
Yeah, this is really
here we
great.
go.
So, is there anything you want to tell us about this house as we walk around?
Got it?
Got it. This is where the British sat. We're using the ghost box. Play with the scanner. My name is Joe. What's your name? Robert? Is anyone from the Brewster family here? Is Caleb Brewster here? Amazing orbs upstairs in the attic of the Brewster house. We're done. Yeah. Thank God. Is it that painful? Anybody else have fun?
So if you want to hear that again, you can go onto my website, ghostsoflongisland.com. And when you look at click on the icon for Haunted Long Island Mysteries, if you scroll, you'll see where it says EVPs, which will connect you to Joe's website. And you can hear that again with a headset through your computer if you want to play it for family members, as well as other ghost box recordings. And you could follow along with the book or on the computer as far as reading the transcript. So it was amazing because Joe and I really felt like we had communication with some of the Brewsters and Davises that day. Maybe some of the British, as Joe had mentioned, maybe Kenneth Barton was a British soldier. But it was truly amazing. And it was like stepping back in time. And we were very excited to report back to the Ward Melville Heritage Organization that we not only got the orbs in our photos, but that we did get this communication with members from the other side. It was fascinating. Now, one last thing that I want to bring up. In this next slide that Joe has, you see me holding a picture. If you've read my books, you know that I've done a lot of research on William Sidney Mount, and he's someone that is almost like a spirit guide at this point for myself and Joe. And we've had a lot of communication with him. I've written about him, about the house, and he was a very well-known genre painter. So he primarily painted portraits of people in their own environments. And he did very few more pastoral images. And this was one. It's entitled The Farmhouse. And look at what it is. And this is a reproduction print of the Brewster House. And I absolutely love this picture. And behind it was his brother's home. And shortly after William painted this, he died, and he did a lot of his painting, as we had mentioned on our other webinars, outdoors and all kinds of weather. And you can see it's winter here. And as the story goes, he may have gotten like the flu or pneumonia and passed away shortly after doing this. But I love this image. And Margo, if you look, you can see the water that you told us about to the right.
And you know what else you can see? Look in the V of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little teeny white house. That's
yeah.
George's Manor House.
That's right. All right.
Yeah.
Which we've written about too.
Yeah.
And so I always love this. And they have this, this print of it in the Brewster House, since it is of the Brewster farmhouse. And it's just something that, was really great. And this is on display. And when the Brewster House was restored in 1968, it was restored to match the 1845 painting, which is the date of this.
That's right. And, if you haven't been to the Brewster House, we suggest you make that trip, and be sure to call Ward Melville ahead of time to make sure that, when it's open and so forth, schedule the tour.
Or at this point too, if you're just driving down 25A and you want to stop over,
just stop and take
you
photos.
could take photos and everything. As you had seen in a previous slide, the Brewster House is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which is wonderful. It was designated as that on February 28, 2008, so it is a protected house. In 2014, an archaeological dig took place at the Brewster House, and most of the items found were shards of light ceramics, pearlware, and whiteware from the 18th century. The Ward Melville Heritage Organization continues the upkeep of the building and grounds while also running on-site programs, which again, they might not be doing now because still getting back from COVID. But they were running a lot of on-site history programs that centered around George Washington's spy ring and its connection to Long Island. Now, Margo, I have to ask you, have you spent any time in the Brewster House? And if so, did you have any experiences there that were otherworldly?
Well, I spent time there for Culper Spy Day, and then went on some private tours, a handful of times in the past 20 years. And I think I love going in the back door. I really feel like I'm stepping back in time. I mean, you feel the history there, and you feel the stories of, the family members. But every time I'm in there, I always feel like I can feel the tavern customers.
Mhm.
I feel like it was a really active meeting place. And that's probably the feeling I'm most overwhelmed with when I walk in, is that it's crowded.
Yeah. And that's
I
what
had
you
that-
got, Joe.
You guys felt
I
that
did.
when
I
you
had
were there,
that
but I
sense
always
too.
feel like there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
People like in there
Myself.
drinking,
I
eating.
think Deborah's with me from, Ward Melville.
Mhm.
I just feel like it's a lot of energy, and I just feel like it's crowded. That's the word I'm going to
Yeah,
use.
no,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a wonderful place, and I hope you all can go and visit it one of these days. Before we finish up and get questions going, Margo, could you just briefly tell us a little bit about the Spy Tours, because it will be starting up again, I'm assuming, with spring
next
coming,
month.
correct?
We have a couple things, and I'm actually we'll tie in the Ward Melville Heritage in a moment. But Spy Tours is actually a play on a triathlon, because we do a water version, a bike, and a walking tour. So we run them all throughout up until November, and you can visit the Three Village Historical Society's website, and we kind of just take you on a little adventure. The heart of it, does center around the Culper Spy Ring, but as I said earlier, we do feel that the community is our museum, so we certainly weave in some non-Revolutionary War history, and we've really had a thread of philanthropy in this area. Obviously, the Melville
Yes.
family, is a very big part of that story. But I was approached recently by the Long Island Railroad, and we're putting together a tour packet of sort of a
That's
train
great.
to the tour. So
Wow.
obviously, you can't tell people to get off in Stony Brook and not send them to the Stony Brook Village Center. So we've highlighted some areas there, especially the Country House and the Grist Mill and the Three Village Inn, and obviously the shopping area and the history there. And then we're collaborating with some local bike shops to rent bikes. So there's a place in Stony Brook Village, and there's also a place right here across from the train station, and take them on bike tours. So that should be
sounds
really
like fun.
exciting, and
Wow.
that should be happening soon. So hopefully we'll get a lot more people from New York coming out, and really, especially with the price of gas, it's not such a bad idea to take the train.
Exactly.
Or the ride a bike.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Now, Margo, if people are interested, you actually are the one that does the tour, so they'll meet
Yes.
you and everything, which is
and the
great.
tour really
She's
is
a
part of
great
my
tour
story.
guide.
The tour is part of my story.
Right.
So I really get into, I first heard the story of the Culper Spy Ring from Anna Smith Strong's great granddaughter, Kate Wheeler Strong. She was my next door neighbor as a 7-year-old. And she used to write for the Long Island Forum, the true tales of the early days on Long Island. And one of them was about Nancy and her magic clothesline. 7 years old, magic clothesline. I was hooked. So, I kind of take you on a little adventure, and obviously I have a very strong connection to the Strong family. And I've heard many, many stories over the years, of Anna and Celia, And Kate just was a plethora of information and really took you back in time. So I like to do that with people when they come, and
You know,
we go on a journey.
Yes.
Margo, I always thought that maybe Bob from the country house might have been related to Annette, the spirit.
Right.
And maybe he came back to this life cycle to keep watch over the house and continue the history and keep the history alive. And I kind of always felt like you might have been living back then, and maybe they sent you back to.
It's funny. I always feel
yeah.
that with Anna Smith Strong, and she had 7 children, and I'm the last of 7 children. So
Mhm,
we know there aren't coincidences.
Yeah,
mhm.
I agree.
I just feel like their stories should be told.
I agree.
It's so much a part of the history of this country. And then you
Exactly.
throw in a female.
Long Island history is so underrated.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is. I wish they would
Long
teach
Island.
it. I wish
I
they would
know.
teach it more in school, because
You
people
know,
don't even know there was a Battle of Long
No.
Island.
And there's so many arguments about Anna Smith Strong being involved. I live here. I know every inch of that water. I know every inch of that land.
Mhm.
It would have been impossible for Abraham Woodhull and Caleb Brewster to pull it off unless somebody was helping on the neck.
Yeah.
And the only one there was Anna, kids, and I certainly think some of the kids helped, and the British. We know
Yeah.
they weren't helping.
Right, exactly. It's amazing. Now, Margo, if people want to do the Try Spy tours, how can they find out about it?
They can go to my website, which is easyculper.com, or they can go to the Three Village Historical Society's website.
Okay, what was the website again?
Well, the Three Village Historical Society, or tvhs.org, or you can go to Culper, CULPER, like the spy ring.com.
Okay, great.
Great.
Fabulous. At this time, we will take some questions. All right, Francis wrote, thank you so much for all the wonderful presentations. Yes, I have to say this is our final webinar for our winter, for our winter presentation. I know everyone's eager to get beyond their computers at this point and start going out into the world again, and we feel the same. And I just want to say, we have a lot of regulars with us tonight, and I really want to thank each one of you for helping us, for helping me and Joe get through the COVID
Definitely.
situation, to give us something to do in between being on the book tour. It has been challenging for us to keep this going, to keep the history alive, to keep, telling about these historical organizations and hoping to keep them up and running. So if we didn't have our listeners and our viewers here, we wouldn't be able to do this. So I really want to take this time to thank all of you for your support and joining in, every month in these webinars. And we hope that you enjoyed it. What we've done this past winter will hopefully in the next month or two be up on my YouTube station, where we have last year's webinars. It won't be in person, obviously, but you can go back to them, at your leisure if you have missed any of them. So we have another question. Great job from someone. Thank you. We really appreciate it. We had fun doing it. It was great to talk about things that we wouldn't necessarily talk about during our fall book tour. And I am starting to book now. So if you guys know of anyone that wants us, if we haven't been to your library yet, you want to put in a word for us, I am starting to book for the fall book tour, which I hope will be 100% in person at that point. Last year, I had 23 events, 16 of them were in person, which was great, but we're shooting for all in-person events. But if you want to know more about where we will be, if you don't already get my newsletter, you can go onto my website again, KerriannFlanaganBrosky.com or ghostsoflongisland.com. Sign up for the newsletter, and that will get you, give you the information of where we're going to be. And Joe is also up on Facebook and various social media. So do check out Joe's website, which has our EVPs and ghost box recordings, and you could follow Joe, because separate from me, Joe also does different group events where he actually takes people out to some of the locations at times that we have done for the book, and teaches people how to do paranormal investigations and to hone in on their own abilities. So again, you could get to Joe's website as well. Okay, we have Kathleen asking, have we done Row Tavern? No, we have not. Margo, but you could probably tell us something about
Yeah, so
Row
the Row
Tavern.
Tavern was, the original location was on 25A, just east of the Brewster House. And it was moved about a mile away, and it's now owned, by a private family. So I would love to get in there.
Yeah.
But the other place that keeps popping in my mind as we were doing this, and I'm sure you could probably get Gloria's blessing, is the mill.
Yeah, we've done that.
We did the grist mill.
Yeah, that
in
was
the beginning. Yeah.
That was in Ghosts of Long Island, the second one, I believe.
Did you get
which-
any activity there?
I think a little bit, but see, back then we didn't have
We didn't
have our
do
ghost
this,
box
yeah.
recording. It was very
I may want to
different.
revisit there. It's coming to me tonight.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. We
Yeah,
should
they
put a
have
whole
story
thing
to tell,
together.
I think.
Yeah, we could do the grist mill. We could go back to the Brewster grave site. It's interesting because for those of you who are familiar with my books, Haunted Long Island Mysteries that came out this past fall is my 9th book, but it's the 4th in the Ghosts series. And it's amazing because it really has evolved into a very spiritual connection with the other side. And so what Joe and I were doing for the earlier Ghosts of Long Island books, I wish we, again, like you said, Mark, go back and use the ghost box and really get, because we just didn't have the ability. We did get some white noise EVPs. I don't remember what we got with that. And those books weren't interactive like what we have now, where you could actually listen to our ghost box recordings from our investigations.
That's
So
one nice
it's a
thing
little different.
about, that's one nice thing about the webinars that if I could add, is because we are able to hone in on playing, like, for example, the video that we're walking around and the spirits are telling us, yeah, go upstairs, get the orbs, cool, that'd be cool. And those kind of things we wouldn't do during necessarily have the time during a library presentation.
Mhm.
So these webinars, you can revisit them, right, Kerriann?
Yeah, well, we really honed in because what we do for our lectures, it's an overview of the book and we talk about the Miller Gin and different places, and we have that set thing. So that's why what we tried to do with the webinars was to really hone in and examine in detail these different properties and give you the full history and what we experienced there. So I am very happy that you all enjoyed listening to these different stories. And we'll see how next year goes. If there's a need for it, we can always revisit doing webinars again. But for now, I'd like to concentrate on getting us on the calendar for various organizations.
That's going to be a good call.
Yeah, and Margo, if you could get us, I'd love to get back to Setauket Neighborhood House.
Oh,
If you have
that's a
any
great
connections
place.
with that,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
we did a great program. We had a lot of people attend that. That's another great place that we should investigate at some point. So it's all good. So at this point, I'd like to say good night. I'd like to thank you all for coming. Let me see, we have one more thing. Ghost Box is great. I'm glad you enjoy it. It is good. So Margo, thank you as always for
Thank you,
joining
guys.
us, your wealth of
So excited.
information. And again, thank you all for your support.
Thank you,
And,
everybody, and
we will
thank you,
see you on the
Margo.
fall book, and we'll see you all on the fall book tour. All right.
care.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you,
Take
everybody.
care. Bye.